All right. Hello and welcome, everyone. I'm glad to have this space and this opportunity to share. A lot of changes and shifts have been going on in my life, and I wouldn't be surprised if changes and shifts have been going on in your life in various ways as well. That seems to be how life goes. Received a comment um, just recently, maybe in the last few hours, basically asking what is this channel about and what are the intentions of this channel. And some people have been seeing, things like membership, so you need to be a member to watch certain videos and things like that. uh, what this is meant to be is a uncontrived hub for being concerned with the Dharma in a totally uncontrived way that's primarily concerned with communication. And communication is almost another word in this sense for generosity, this willingness to share and this willingness to give our hearts, our bodies, our minds, our lives, ourselves. Not enough to kind of just be, going around and thinking about this and thinking about that, and somehow life works out. It's not how it works. And this is a community for people who want to be concerned with the Dharma, who want to be concerned with enlightenment. But it's not my affinity, it's not my tendency to produce any kind of contrivance. So making videos with titles and thumbnails and descriptions and introductions and selling courses and things like that I'm not interested in that. I don't really believe in that. And I'm not doing this because I need money or I need some kind of social gratification from other people. Rather, this is a way for me to practice giving, for me to practice sharing, for me to practice being vulnerable, and to offer that space for others. And I invite people to get as involved in my life and in this work, and really in the work and the life of being concerned with the Dharma, concerned with enlightenment, as much as they would like to. And I find that it's something I wanted to share. I recently posted my apology video. I posted the apology video for the community and for the channel, and I do mean that, and that's really my sincerity to practice that way, and it's something that I've been looking at recently inside of myself. And it really became very vibrant in me when I watched this documentary recently called Predator, that was kind of saying, hey, these TV shows that are exploiting pedophiles and people's lives ending are, in a sense, the predators. They are practicing and perpetuating this predatory mindset, of preying on others. And I was thinking about, well, how am I doing that when people come in and act foolish, or act in a way that's not the way that I would choose to act. And so what you're seeing in certain ways of me acting and interacting with people is a very live, happening, unfolding communication, interpenetration of experience that comes from a lot of my own experience of being in some of these communities where you act like a fool, or you act very disingenuous, or you argue with people, or you do this or that. That's all that they have. That's all that a lot of online communities have. This is a place, and my life is a place for people who are really concerned with the Dharma, who are concerned with enlightenment, with the ending of suffering. That doesn't mean that the cappuccino needs to be have a Buddhist image in it, although I think that'd be a great idea. So coming into presence and coming into awareness, and also, this is an ongoing process of unpacking and looking deeply into this format and this context that's very unusual. It's very unusual for someone to have maybe a lot of experience with meditation, a lot of experience with Buddhism, to be sharing and teaching and facilitating a space that's about awakening, and yet it's in a very real focused on this live happening. And as much as it can be unfiltered, being unfiltered and it being based in this generosity and this willingness to give. And I'm willing to give a lot. My life has kind of been about that up to this point. My formative years and my formative environment of being a monk and living at the monasteries, etc. And I do apologize, and I do want to improve, and I do want to have a better mentality in terms of what I'm doing and skillfulness and making it more welcoming and open. But also, people have to understand that this is a dynamic process taking place. And if you are not willing to communicate with me about your experience, your understanding, your willingness to give, your willingness to share, then you're not helping. You're not stepping up. You're not taking responsibility. You're not being a part of what's being done here. And then if you're sitting back and kind of judging me about that, well, you weren't involved. So how could I have learned from you during that time? So it's a real emphasis on this quality of showing up and giving, and that being spontaneous, that being unplanned, that being uncontrived, that being kind of unknown, and being in this sense of unknowing is very important in terms of what I'm teaching and the work that we're doing here in the Monk Life Meditation Institute. Not quite in paradise, but maybe in the next, maybe tomorrow. But I'm kind of looking at it and I'm considering, because it's not like I'm a millionaire. It's not like I'm a wealthy character. It's not like I have a bunch of students or a board of directors that are supporting me in this work. This is a small community. This is a grassroots organization, and we're taking it step by step. And it's primarily about our own willingness to sacrifice our lives to be free, and trying to create and facilitate and find a context where that can be more reasonable, not just for helping ourselves, but also for helping others in a very real way. And I want to give a shout out to Joey365 Official. Joey365 Official is a friend of the show. Many people here may not know him or have ever heard about him. I don't even think he's a Buddhist, but he actually makes clips. He makes clips of some of the more exciting and interesting videos and puts them on his channel. So shout out and thank you to Joey, who's also a member. Currently, up to now, I've been leveraging the membership system to kind of actually give people a little bit of a way out, to not be overwhelmed by the content. Because what I'm realizing, and it's very humbling to realize this, and not worrying, because there's a really positive point about exposing one's own faults. But this is scary stuff. People are feeling fear about what they're seeing, and they don't understand what's going on here. You can see it's a lot of energy. And also, usually we'd put that into a box of, okay, that's a crazy person. But then in another live stream, clearly I'm sounding very well put together and very clear-minded and all that kind of thing. So it's not my intention to scare anybody, at least not consciously, but it is a scary world. It's a scary reality from the view of self. from the view of self-defense, from the view of self-seeking, from the view of trying to get what you want and to avoid what you don't want to experience, because it's impossible for us to do that. And I don't know what to do. I'm a little bit confused as well in certain ways, because most meditation masters, most Buddhist masters would advise against me doing what I'm here doing. I remember I met Martin Piadamo at his monastery in northern Thailand, and he said, whatever, he didn't say exactly like this, but he said, whatever you do, don't try to teach the Dharma. Don't go around teaching the Dharma. And what I got from that was him pointing to the heavy karmic retributions of teaching the Dharma in the wrong way. And he said, you should go be an English teacher. And many other meditation masters would say something like, focus on your own practice. Don't be putting yourself out there so much. Not even necessarily trying to teach, but whatever this is, kind of turn inwards. But my teacher, who's very mysterious and I don't understand and is scary as all hell, has transmitted this method to me, that I'm curious about, and that does bring richness to my life and the lives of other people as well. And that is to say that I'm willing to try to continue doing good deeds with mindfulness and detachment limitlessly. And at the core of what is a good deed is generosity. So I'm sharing myself. I'm sharing my scariness. I'm sharing my vulnerability. I'm sharing my just my practice of giving. Giving myself. And I think it's a little bit. I'm not trying to take back my apology or say that I'm not doing certain things in an unskillful way, but I think for some people out there who are kind of watching and interested in the Dharma or whatever, and kind of sitting back in their lazy boys and making judgments about what's going on here, it's a little bit problematic because, I'm busy here. I'm busy giving. And it may not be what I would ideally want to give. It may not be what someone else might ideally want to receive, but I am busy giving and putting myself out there and trying to be available to help people and support people to be concerned with the Dharma. But if these people don't step up to share, to reach out to me, to communicate, there's a problem in that. Not just for me, but there's a problem in that with our community, with the global Sangha, right? The worldwide Sangha, you know. I've dealt with a lot of fear in my life. I've felt a lot of fear in my life. And so that fear informs my teachings. And I try to push myself in such a way where I'm confronting that ego, I'm confronting that fear, I'm confronting that vulnerability and practicing generosity still, but not being over encumbered by that, not being dominated by that. I had a really lengthy and interesting conversation with someone last night, and kind of maybe building up or practicing a little bit for the conversation with Angelo DeLulu. I expect him to just bend me over and spank me, but who knows? And we were having this conversation about non-duality and following the path and awareness, and how a certain kind of teaching or presentation can almost be like teaching disassociation. So like, don't think about anything. You don't exist. There's no such thing as anybody. The whole world is an illusion. and that can be a kind of teaching of disassociation depending on where it's coming from. So that could come from a great master, or that could come from a person who's not that great. And what the conversation slowly folded into was this idea that if we are concerned with enlightenment, and I'm not saying that anybody has to be concerned with enlightenment. The Buddha didn't say that. The Buddha said, leave me, if you want to hang out with me, come into the forest. So Vietnam right now is my forest. And there's a real practical efficacy in terms of our wish for enlightenment in taking refuge in the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha as best as we can know it. And there's a real lack of efficacy when as best as we can know it is not based on an open line of communication, an open line of sharing, where we can really be willing to be generous. We can really be willing to give. And I think there's a kind of conceitedness and a selfishness from some of the viewers, the backseat lazy boy viewers of this community, that see all these comments coming through. They know there's all these people out there that aren't connected with the Dharma, but they're not willing to take responsibility themselves to give, and to give in a space that is accessible and available to them. And how many times can I talk about it? That this practice of generosity is not about money, and your money isn't, your money is worth much when you don't have a lot of money. When you have a lot of money, your money's not really worth anything at all. It's just like kicking dirt on somebody. So what is really being invited here is that this is a path of practice, and it's a path of practice based on, meditation. And I would do better to do some more meditation, guided meditation teachings and things like that. But especially it's a path and it's a practice of doing good deeds founded in practicing generosity, concerned with the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha. So this is a space that facilitates that. And when these people aren't stepping up and they're not getting involved and they're not willing to be vulnerable, well, it's no wonder that they're not having any success. Because this is not something that you can sit back in your lazy boy chair and watch and consume. In a sense, there's even an aspect of this that makes that not possible. You can't sit back and consume a 6-hour live stream with a guy putting on makeup and wigs and reading Dharma talks and listening to Dharma talks from meditation masters and having people call in and debating with people and trying to meet trolls on their level, etc. I'm not trying to aggrandize what I'm doing. I'm trying to invite people to get more involved with their own practice of generosity and doing good deeds concerned with the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha. And you stepping up allows more people to step up. So I had somebody reach out recently and they said, I'm done with this shit. I gave you 2 donations. I was never thanked. I'm not giving anymore, and I'm done with this channel. I hear you. But if we're not able to have a conversation, if you're taking in all this giving, right? So whether I'm good or bad or right or wrong or whatever, all this time, all this energy that I'm giving, and you're not really giving anything back, there's a deficit there that's going to create a lot of frustration in you. And what I'm talking about here is communication. I'm not talking about, you need to give all this money, or I need to be your master, or something like that. Because we can't pretend that a part of this practice and a part of this teaching isn't that call out, that invitation to give, to share deeply and to listen deeply. And once we share a little deeply and give a little deeply, then we give more, we show up more, and we get our receipts. We get our payback for that. And, there's people living in prison. There's people doing all kinds of horrible things, and we have to have compassion for those too. I'm just putting on a show. I'm just playing with words. I'm just playing with my identity. I'm not trying to hurt anyone. I'm not trying to hurt myself. and these years of my practice as a monk, and the teaching and the sharing isn't just some commercial kind of object to be looked at. It's a part of my essence and who I am. And what? Because now I'm talking weirdly and acting crazily, I'm not deserving of a deep listen. I'm not deserving of a call. And so this is the challenge on the table here. This is the invitation on the table here. And when I said to this guy that I was having a really interesting call with last night, more than an hour, kind of a non-duality teacher, he spent like 20 years in some American Tibetan tradition from Chogyam Trungpa's son, the continuation of the Shambhala or whatever. And it got to this point when I said, if you're teaching people about enlightenment, and that's what the people there are interested in is enlightenment, you're teaching them disassociation if you're not inviting them to this fold of boundless resources that are available, support from above and support from below, to be more serious about this practice. And that 100% is what it takes. I'm not trying to pull anybody's leg. I'm not trying to make money. I'm not, really, I'd be crazy if I was doing this because I was trying to make money. Now, I will say that Shiva Kailash Shambho did rub off on me a little bit because he's kind of a spiritual businessman, but I'm not a spiritual businessman. This is an invitation to create and facilitate practice and community and discussion, etc. But it can be very difficult to be challenged. And why I had a lot of good success in this deep and interesting conversation with this person from last night, who's kind of a non-duality teacher, is that they have a very generous spirit, not taking everything personally. And when they do take something personally, they see that as something in them that is reacting. And that's something to unpack for ourselves, not to blame someone else for making us feel that way. I want to help people. I want to help children. I don't just want to help middle-aged white men and women who have lazy boy chairs and would like someone to teach them a Dharma talk or lead a meditation retreat or produce teaching videos. I've been there and I've done that. That's not my sole interest. So when we have 60 plus people in here, there's a responsibility there. It's not just we're getting views. There's a responsibility. And I'm trying to do what I can do to allow people to feel interested in a space that, whether you like it or not, whether I like it or not, is concerned with the Buddha, Dhamma, and the Sangha, is concerned with enlightenment, is concerned with freedom, is concerned with compassion, is concerned with wisdom, is concerned with the best Dharma teachers of our age. So I'd like people to take more responsibility instead of pointing the finger or thinking that your like or your dislike or your consumption of this content is somehow helping anybody out or even helping yourself out. Many people who will be in this space do not know what's going on. They don't have a capacity to know what's going on. People in the world. So our willingness to call up and to reach out, literally or energetically, creates more dynamics for these people to link into and develop an understanding, because many people's understanding might be all the way down here and your understanding might be here, right? But you being willing to reach out, to share, to give, to be vulnerable, to show up in whatever way can be a bridge from those people here to there. And then we can create that principle of being able to bridge all the way up to there, and hopefully eventually to become free from attachment to thoughts, attachments to images in our minds. It's this problem, right, of everybody thinking that everything is about them. Hey, friend, this isn't about you. This is not just about you. It's one of the things my teacher would say to me again and again, literally, figuratively. This is not about you. This is not all about you. And how do we bridge the divide between this being all about ourselves and this being about everyone or everything? With generosity, with self-sacrifice, with a willingness to share deeply, with a willingness to listen deeply, 100%. This is also a kind of activism work. This is a kind of Buddhist activism. And this is not me trying to justify myself, because I don't have to justify myself here. I can take care of my life. I can take care of myself. Some parts of me, I think unconsciously and sometimes consciously, want my entire YouTube channel to be removed so I can move on, you know, but rather to explain and to extrapolate upon the principles and practices that are at play here, that are factually concerned with the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha, factually concerned with enlightenment, factually concerned with Nibbana and the end of suffering. Chukmung Namoi. Yeah. Factually concerned with helping children, factually concerned with helping people, and probably more so than you. You know, shamefully, I'm sorry, you know. Concerned with the highest Dharma teachers that we can get our hands on, you know. But after those years of being a monk and all of my experimenting with community leading and, you know, that kind of coming to an end, I finally took a Bill O'Reilly kind of position. And I said, fuck it. We will do it live. And that's precisely what's happening here. You want to come and make a meditation center in Vietnam, or you want to come and live with me in Vietnam or practice together with me or whatever, well, we'll try to make it happen. Whatever it is. Goku is a bodhisattva. You got it. Muten Roshi. Who's Muten Roshi? Which one is that? Is that from Bleach? Okay, interesting question. Is this samsara? As much as we are stuck in thinking, this is samsara. In as much as thinking appears, but we are free from thinking, this is nibbana. So, Master Young Hua recently gave a Dharma talk where he was talking about the different realms of existence, referencing his teacher's commentaries, Master Sun Hua. 0% thoughts and 0% emotions. So if you can be in a space, not that things aren't happening, but all kinds of things are happening, but there's 0% thoughts and there's 0% emotions, then you are Buddha. That's the definition of Buddha. And remember, if you like, that I am not a monk. But some people equate enlightenment with being a monk. So you might think I'm enlightened. So you have the liberty to think that I'm enlightened. But I would say don't equate enlightenment with being a monk. Not the same thing. If you wanted to be a monk, you would start by reaching out to either someone that has been a monk before or someone that is a monk now. Monks oftentimes live at Buddhist temples or Buddhist monasteries, and you might be surprised that there are actually monks nearby you. If you live in like a major city, there's probably Buddhist monks nearby you. Right now, there's like a big group of monks walking across the country to Washington, D.C. So that makes the perspective of being ourselves very different when we can kind of look at thoughts as if they're not who we are. An interesting experiment with this is like think of one thought that you have, maybe like a positive thought about someone. Thoughts work in such a way where you could also think a thought that was the opposite of the thought that you identify as your thought or who you are. So one of the highest truths that I can share right now is that you are not your thoughts and you are not defined by your thoughts. Your mind is not defined by thoughts. Your being, your life is not defined by thoughts. So another way to understand this is looking at the body. So if you look at the body, none of the body is defined by thoughts. It doesn't operate according to thoughts. So like your central nervous system doesn't operate according to thoughts. The heart beating doesn't operate according to thoughts. The breathing, the direct experience of breathing or like conscious breathing does not depend on thoughts. Now, what we're usually talking about when we talk about thoughts is words and phrases. And so if you have this belief that you are words and phrases or you are your thoughts, this may be because you haven't like looked deeper into the mind. So sometimes when people take psychedelics, they have this really crazy, like out of body experience. And they say, wait a minute, clearly the words and phrases that I have been telling a story about myself and my life don't line up with this direct experience. And the way of the meditation or the Buddha Dharma is to go deeper and deeper into the mind of direct experience. And it's very clearly not based on thoughts, not based on memories. Just like the heart beating is very clearly not based on thinking or words and phrases. And if we have this, we identify with our thoughts in a way where it's like the whole world, I am nothing if I'm not my thoughts. It's like thinking that thoughts or words and phrases created the human body or created the world or created like elephants, that somehow elephants were created by words and phrases. Basically, what what seems to create us. What creates us is cause and effect, seeming cause and effect. And this cause and effect is impersonal, like a tree is impersonal, or the sunrise is impersonal, or the natural environment is impersonal. So thoughts are kind of like an overlay or an additive. It's adding something. It's like thoughts, the normal thoughts that we think about, like words and phrases, conceptual words and phrases, are like ultra processed food basically for the mind. And so when all you eat is thoughts, or all you eat in terms of the mind, in terms of the self, is words and phrases, you basically develop a chronic health condition of shallow thinking or non-contemplative thinking. Because like if I look at this tree branch behind me, right? No thoughts can describe that. Even though I can think all kinds of thoughts about that tree branch, no thoughts can describe that, what that is. So what that is kind of beyond thinking and before thinking as well. Okay, so Robert Miles, it should be, yeah, it should be, and no, not particularly. I'm trying to encourage people in the past for sure, and I'm sure it will come up from time to time, subliminally or unconsciously, for people to donate, for people to support me because I'm kind of independent. But that's not a primary intention of mine, is to generate donations or to receive financial compensation. I can't say that it's not nice, but I will say that as time has gone by, it's got less nice, less stimulating. But it should be conducive to detachment. The listening in that way, like a real kind of listening, is not everybody can do that, and it will require communication. So whatever kind of communication that you can practice with the person that you're listening to may facilitate a kind of stronger resonance or connection to what's being said, or the principles and the practices behind what is being said, that can be better explained or shared with you because you're giving something, you're sharing something. But it's not about money, just like it's not about having a conversation. So some people calling me up and having a conversation, about what I'm talking about, wouldn't help them any more than just continuing to listen, because that's at the place that they're at. In the same way, someone donating, someone being a major donor or whatever, I'm not really talking about just throwing some pennies at me or throwing a couple bucks at me, but, you know, actually sharing your what's very valuable and essential to your life with someone else. um, it's not for sure that that person will then inherently have a deeper understanding of what I'm saying. So it's not totally black and white. Oh, you would have to, for someone to be in that position, from my perspective, they'd have to have more information about like who I was as a person and my experiences. And to actually get to know someone else, you have to be more vulnerable. Because when you're trying to understand someone else, you're trying to understand the someone else that's inside of yourself. And so you need more information that correlates to the understanding inside of yourself from that person that is like a mirage or an image in your mind. But in terms of like, you know, going out of my way to justify myself, that's not very meaningful to me. I don't think that's very important or helpful for anybody. Just creates more space for people to stay confused. So it looks like we're getting, maybe this is from my side, it's a little bit discongruent, Robert. Um, so the principle is that if you're a rich person, money doesn't have very much value to you except in transaction. So the generosity here, so like I have one of my follower is like a student in Canada from Sri Lanka, and he's, you know, he's just getting by. So if he were to send me $5 or $10 or whatever, that's actually a big difference for him in his life. That's actually a practice of surrender, a practice of self-sacrifice for him, not having anything to do with me. For a rich person, for a wealthy person, if they were to send me $100 or $1,000, for them, that might actually not be much at all. So the practice of generosity here is not really concerned with making merit, because as Westerners, we don't believe in that so much. It's more concerned with detachment. So a practice of detachment. But the generosity as a practice of detachment here is not a matter of giving money. It's sharing time, it's sharing vulnerability, it's sharing your experience, it's being vulnerable. It's being vulnerable to that which you don't want to be vulnerable to. And it's very essential and a very core kind of practice and teaching that's going on here. Okay, Robert says, is it beneficial to feel like you are in debt and ashamed over spending money you could have used for your own life? Is it beneficial to feel like you are in debt and ashamed over? Well, so it's definitely beneficial to feel like you are in debt, because you are in debt. You're in debt to the environment, you're in debt to your parents, you're in debt to the whole world that has supported and facilitated you to be alive up to this point, all those known and unknown sources and resources that have benefited you. So like as human beings, we're in debt to the planet Earth. And if we actually felt like we were in debt to the planet Earth, rather than feeling like we were in debt to kings and queens and other, you know, these kind of primate overlords, then the world would be a much better place. Should we be ashamed over spending money we could have used for our own life? Well, there's a difference between spending money and using money to help others. So it'd be very difficult to feel ashamed for using your money to help others. It'd also be very difficult to feel ashamed for using your money to practice self sacrifice or generosity. But just spending money on things, of course, and being in a bunch of debt because of that, yeah. But it's a totally different thing. If you were to go into debt to help build a monastery, to feed people, to help people meet their basic needs, versus going into debt to buy a bunch of nonsense or to gamble, it's a totally different thing. So it's not just about spending money. It's more subtle than that. It's more practical than that. Well, I look at it in terms of neuropsychiatry, neuroscience. So there's a kind of programming, and I hope you'll be a little bit generous and bear with me. I'm not actually a medical doctor. There's a programming in this central nervous system that facilitates fear and terror and like a panic response. But if you were not to have that system or that praxis or that way of engorging in this fear response or this fear of life, trying to protect your life response, then you could entirely eliminate those afflictive emotions, those negative emotions from your nervous system. But it's very unlikely to be able to go through that if you're not facing that tendency that's already there. And facing that tendency that is already there is probably going to have a lot of experience of going more deeply into suffering. So, in the same way, if you're trying to get out of debt, like in being fat or being overweight, you're probably going to have to go into more debt of trying. One of the difficulties that we try to bridge with our generosity is a move into practicality. And when we're not able to be generous, our conversations are more one-sided than conversations that have deep practicality can be. Right? It's kind of like talking into a mirror. Although you see somebody else's face there, you're talking into a mirror because you have a lot more information that you're not willing to give because of self-defensiveness or what have you. And we all have that. There's nothing inherently wrong in wanting to defend oneself. It's just that it creates all kinds of sufferings, all kinds of confusions, all kinds of impracticality. Money is a primary attachment here in the modern world. So, as much as you can put your money where your mouth is, people will respect you, people will give you a little bit of credit, people may even trust you. But you shouldn't expect people to trust you just because you happen to be somewhere. And not even physically somewhere, but just you're just putting some words out there. So, why would anybody trust that? So, why would someone trust me? Maybe because I was a Buddhist monk for 7 years, maybe because there are thousands of hours of me live streaming. Maybe because you can pick up a phone and call me and I'll talk to you, especially if you're in a time of need. And base materialism is exactly what we have to go into debt with to go out of it. You can't just kind of, I'm detached, I have no self, there's nothing, everything is nothing. Let's just get back to pure spirituality. You're going to have to invest practically in what's going on right now with what has value to you. That's why doing an online meditation retreat is a lot more difficult than doing a in-person meditation retreat because people can come and go whenever they like. Chukmung Namoy. And also creating these imaginary positions for other people is very problematic. And that's one of the things I'm trying to work on is to not make these imaginary positions for people that I'm trying to reach out to and contact to. I'm very reachable, but I'm especially reachable if you're in a time of need or in a time of intensity or what have you. Chúc mừng năm mới. Xin chào, come on. Bye bye. One of the things that happens, I had this happen recently where someone was like in a time of need and trying to figure things out and then got some benefit from the teachings or the energy here. And then instead of, because they reached out to me and said, okay, so what are the next steps? What should I do? How should I practice? And, I gave them this advice and then they just kind of went off into doing their own thing and acting foolish. and not reaching out again for advice, but pretending that I was like their boyfriend or something. No, simply that society is not your idea of society. So your idea of me re-entering society is not an absolute ideal of me re-entering society. And you know very little about me and my life and my heart. And I invite you to watch the most recent YouTube video on my channel, where I got a chance to really be kind of pumped up by some wonderful Vietnamese children who shared a lot of joy and a lot of happiness with me, just going across the street and visiting someplace. And that's one of the big passions of mine, is like looking at colonialism, looking at cultural appropriation, looking at disassociated systems of authority based on one's own personal experiences rather than a personal position of unknowing and openness. So it's like it's developing this very rigid sense of self-confidence and identity based on your experience, and that's deeply problematic and confused. So it's like this idea that me being in Vietnam is a cop out from me being in America, but I am just where I am. It's like, Dr. Rob, you've gone through all this stuff. You've been trying to make money on the YouTube, but it's time to give it a break and go back to America and get a job in construction. Well, yeah, that's one idea. That's one way to approach it, but that's not really my interest. Just like money isn't really my interest. If I have enough to take care of myself, then that's enough. I don't need a big screen TV. I don't need a car. You know, I don't need a $500,000 house or something like that. That's ridiculous for me. Yeah. People may think all kinds of different things. Chúc mừng năm mới. Xin chào, come on. Yeah. Boop, boop. Here, here. You want to talk? You want to sing? You want to sing a song? Ooh-wee, ooh-wee, ooh-wee. Chúc mừng năm mới. 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 So this will probably maybe sound a little bit unbelievable, but I would respect their perspective. I would respect their position. I wouldn't inherently think that my perspective or my position was above theirs because they're, little angels, little babies. Chúc mừng năm mới. You know, it could be true, but we don't, who's to say? And maybe it's true at one moment and then not true at the next. Chúc mừng năm mới. Sing a song. Sing a song. Do, 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 do. Thank you, Adam. You too. But, now I'm not a monk. So I've had situations before where someone wants to like a man from America wants to have a relationship with me. And you know, I'm not really comfortable with that desire for them to have a relationship with me. Just by, the way that they live or the way that they act. So that's not about money, that's more about energy. That there's certain energy that I'm comfortable with. So like these wonderful Dharma teachers have very fine and light and fresh kind of energy. But if someone's watching a lot of my content, wants to support me, wants to follow me, and I don't necessarily feel comfortable with their energy, well then that's something that both parties have to accept. And Robert, I'm not going to keep repeating the same thing over and over again. I've explained the principle of generosity many times. Sometimes people offer money as an expression of their self-sacrifice and their wish to support the work that's going on, not about paying me for anything. Right? So the generosity principle is either based on making merit, which doesn't have much relevance for Western people, or it can be based on detachment, can be based on energy exchange, but non-transactional in nature. I was a monk for 7 years at Buddhist monasteries all over the world. No, Robert, of course not. That's my worst nightmare. And also, you may have to consider that this has been going on for a number of years. We have members of the community. They're just more like practitioners, and they're not here to just have conversations or debate about anything. And coming back to, that this is not about you. And if you try to make this about you, you might miss out on what's actually going on here. And I'm saying that in the mirror, I'm saying that to myself. That's why I made that apology recently. And remember, what we work with here is we work with that phrase or that mentality. Is that so for ourselves? So I might have an idea about I've maybe had an idea about someone else. And I'm looking at myself and I'm saying that right now. I might have had an idea about someone else. And maybe at that time, someone particularly is coming to mind. Is that so? Is that idea really true? And then just going into the questioning and the opening of maybe that's not absolutely true. But in the face of all this spiritual woo-wah, I also, have some boundaries. And if somebody wants to lay in bed next to me, I'm not saying they're a bad person. I'm not saying they want to do bad things, but I might say, okay, well, pay me a little rent money, will you? But that's not what this YouTube channel is about. That's more like an interpersonal relationship that I'm willing to share my boundaries and my feelings about, disagreeing with someone's way of being as it relates to being in relationship with me. I've slept in the bed with my teacher. It was one of my early memories as a monk. We were out in Myanmar. Chúc mừng năm mới. Chúc mừng năm mới. Na na na. We were out in Myanmar, the middle of nowhere, some monastery by the ocean or by a really big river. And it was late at night, and we arrived, and the teacher still wasn't there because his car maybe had to stop to do some teachings or something. And I had laid in the bed in this, not really like a cushioned bed, but just this flat platform that was apparently for the teacher, but nobody said anything because I was this kind of dumb Westerner monk. So I laid there and I fell asleep, and I opened my eyes, and my teacher was was laying there right next to me with his eyes open looking at me. And so I got out of there. But one of my big intentions and a big part of this work is to like bring a practical grounding to our minds that's not based on just the first like trauma response or the first reactionary response, like, oh my gosh, how could you say that? Instead of, huh. So concurrent huh moments is what I'm hoping to invite here. And then we can start laughing. Huh, 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 huh. You know, and I'm not trying to mock people. I'm frustrated. I get frustrated. I get worked up because I see the potentiality for being in community and helping each other. That's not about money. But sometimes for some people, it would make a lot of sense for it to be about money because that's one of the best things that they can offer in terms of their ego, to kind of lower their ego. And a lot of times we don't realize how out of control and inappropriate our ego is, how irreverent we are, how unconsiderate we are, how unfair we are. And I, in myself. I'll tell you something. I was talking with a very good friend of mine, and I was talking about that apology video that I made. And I got, that apology video got 100 likes. Where the hell did all those 100 likes come from? I think in general, people like to see people apologize and take responsibility. So it's probably random people that said, yeah, I like that that guy's apologizing. I don't know him, but I like that he's apologizing. And I was looking at that and I said, it's amazing because people think that that's me. Even when I was doing that, even when I was making that apology video, like, yeah, I was sincere and I was really feeling it and I really wanted to share that with everyone. But even while I was doing it, I knew that that wasn't me. I look back on that and I know that that's not me. And all that's, that crazy stuff, wearing paint on my face, wearing makeup, screaming in the graveyard, I know that that's not me. And I'm trying to make it very clear for people that it's impossible for some appearance to be me. It's impossible for some memory, some idea, some story of you to be you. Because we are inherently beyond all that, in the fullness of this spacious awareness. So why not make a fool of myself? I'm not running an orphanage. If I was running an orphanage, I probably wouldn't be acting, so irreverent to possible donors. But I'm just here taking care of myself. And this is also a really confusing point, that me encouraging you to practice. So let's say, for example, that you identified a spiritual teacher, and that spiritual teacher was encouraging you to practice by reaching out to spiritual teachers and try to have a conversation with them. It would be very misinformed if we thought that that meant that that spiritual teacher wanted us to call them, or that that spiritual teacher wanted us to call another spiritual teacher for the benefit of that spiritual teacher. That's a kind of just like a a subtle misconception about what's being conveyed, right? Is good. If you're developing, if you're going down your path, that's great. But that's not really about me. That's about you. No, I don't want to call anybody right now. I'd be open to calling my teacher or calling a spiritual master or someone who's been on the path for a while and having a conversation, maybe, but not necessarily. There's nobody in particular that I want to call right now. And this goes back to that confusion about people thinking that their want to be here and watch this and participate in this has something to do with my desire. That like I should be responsible for their desire to be here. I can't be, even if I wanted to be. So it's always a matter of like using the mind to look back at the mind instead of telling stories about other people and yourself in relationship to other people. Eat what you don't like. It's good. Nothing wrong with that. I'm learning from that experience. But as much as I can be subtle in any way, I'm very coarse. That's why I direct people to, masters that are much more experienced than me if they're ready to do that. So I like to share something with everyone because I just wanted to share that. I didn't know it was going to go out that way, but I want to share it more than I want to get views from it. Um, this incredible joy. There might be some good images in there, Shelley, for special edition holographic, because some of the holographic cards, they can be vertical, and then you can have a special edition one that's horizontal, so you turn it that way. Just one of the projects we're working on here in the Monk Life Meditation Institute is to develop some Monk Life trading cards. That'll be coming up in the next few months, and we're not sure if we're going to do an auction or a giveaway, or maybe to just send them all to me and I'll have a deck of my own trading cards. But pretty cool thing coming up. The front is going to have the image with something animated, something of me, and then on the back there's going to be a teaching from me. So maybe we can just reach out and set up something to get those to people who consider themselves students or longtime followers and practitioners. Give something back. Angen, we will maybe in a couple months or so. We'll start to have some things to offer like that, some merchandise. We're just in the learning phase and exploratory phase with all that, but the experiences that we're having now, maybe can lead to a Monk Life clothing line in the future. I have some very interesting ideas for different clothing that we could do. Really nice, kind of the kind of clothing that I like to wear. Um, but right now, just being as awareness, being thoughtless, spacious presence. And eventually, um, having a Monk Life Meditation Center, Monk Life Meditation Institute, whichever one sounds better, I suppose. Dr. Rob may in fact be retiring quite soon, so I might give myself a new title in the near future. 100%. I mean, that's one of the biggest long-term goals or missions is orphanage and single mothers home, that kind of thing for women in especially places like Myanmar. Um, it's a big vision. So I was talking about in the live stream before how someone said they were going to send me $200,000 in Bitcoin, and it's probably like a kind of gotcha moment. Um, I said, okay, well, I better, get a Bitcoin address to give to this person. But really, that's more in line with the needs that I would have, rather than enough money to take more comfortably care of myself. Yeah, keep in mind that there are no third world workers in the third world, because for them, that's just the world. So this like unconscious racism and superiority about Asian people and brown people and people who speak different languages and have different cultures is something that I'm very little bit protective about. I was a monk for 7 years, but I'm not a monk anymore. I've consumed a lot of ayahuasca, more than most people, I suppose. And my thoughts on it is that it's all about set and setting. And it's also really not a cure all, which goes into the set and setting. So even if you went to like an idealistic retreat center in Peru or in South America that did ayahuasca ceremonies, these kinds of experiences may bring you to a place of openness where a total restructuring of your life may be necessary to deal with the underlying habit patterns and energies that are perpetuating suffering in you. Yeah, I've heard the Bufo thing is pretty good. And you can also get that by following my teacher in India, because your entire central nervous system will be on fire in the heat, the bugs, the asceticism, the food, if you're not comfortable with foods from different places. The main purpose of the monk life is to de identify with surface level thoughts, like de identify with words and phrases that build up the ego, and go deeper into the mind and learn how to rewire your central nervous system to be free, completely free from suffering. So you might still feel pain, but you won't feel fear anymore about that pain. Or you might even still feel fear, but you won't feel any fear about that fear. It's kind of like breaking contradictions. So it's like good and bad as a contradiction, or things that exist on the same, like the two ends of a pencil, and breaking the pencil in a way where there's no points on the pencil anymore. There's no sides on the pencil anymore. Yeah, dividing by zero. Let's all learn how to divide by zero. That's a great one. Thank you, Pyrat. That's really nice. And that's a good, that would be a good quote to put on the back of a card. Uh, let's learn how to divide by zero. I don't remember that lesson in math class. And I can also understand some, I'm not saying it's confusion, but concern from different people, because if I'm not doing this to make money, then what am I doing? Then what is this actually about? There's a kind of a spiritual friend of mine named Shiva Kailash Shambho that I've been doing some pretty wacky and wild live streams with recently. And I pointed to this interesting difference between our channels, because he's like a spiritual businessman. You know, he wants to make enough money to support himself in a big way, you know. And we were talking about the members only, you know, making live streams or making videos members only. And I saw that on his channel, he makes thumbnails and he makes titles that would be videos that people want to watch. And then he makes those members only. I make videos members only when I don't feel like it would be a good idea for people to watch them. And anyways, you know, who really watches a 6-hour live stream? I don't know who they are because they usually don't comment. Okay, thank you everyone for joining in this live stream. May you be healthy, wealthy, and peaceful in the body and mind. May all of your good and wholesome wishes come true. And may we be a force for peace in our own lives, even when peace isn't on the table. May we either prepare it or remember it and rest in awareness. Take care, everyone. Be well.